Hey yo guys, what's up and welcome back to Two Toe Tag's Metal Reviews. And today we're going to have our final review of Gold by Scour. So we were pretty excited to review this album. We reacted to two singles a while back, Infusorium and Blades. Loved them both. The album dropped. We had kind of mixed first impressions because of, some repetition issues and some interlude issues and things like that. But we decided to not review it that week, and we are now reviewing it this week. So we're a week late on our review. But with all that said, spent a lot of time listening to it this week, spun it tons of times, and I gotta say, I'm still pretty mixed with my feelings about the album. I'm a little bit conflicted because I really like the album. Mm-hmm. I think this is a solid album. I think it's just, I could put it on, just vibe with it the whole way through.
Yeah.
But my problem is, as a reviewer, reviewing the album is very difficult. It's one of those albums. And it's a bit of a shame. I feel like the first half of this album is very strong. And it just kicks your ass. It gives me all the good feelings that I want out of an album like this. Just nice, brutal, dark, black metal, kind of just awesome stuff. The second half of the album, while those elements are present, I feel like they've already been exhausted. And I feel like the second half of the album is just more kind of the same stuff, but not as good as the first half. Mm-hmm. So it was hard for me to get into that and to really enjoy the second half of the album. And I was trying to really pay closer attention to those songs and, to find things that I could like about them. And I was really struggling. And it left myself wondering if I took some of those songs, like what if I mixed up the track placement or whatever, would it make a difference? I honestly think all the strongest songs are near the front half of the album. I think that's just how it is.
Like, I assume to test that you put the album on shuffle?
I did not put it on shuffle, but I didn't have much trouble writing notes or finding things that I liked about the first few songs.
Okay, so those were the consistent ones that were always standing out.
They were exactly. They were always standing out. Every time they would come on through my rotations, I would go, oh, fuck yeah. Like, this is next. Oh, I look forward to this one. I mean, basically, I'm literally talking about tracks 1 through 6. I think are all great, and tracks 7 through 13 are all fine, with the exception of the interludes, which I think are all an absolute stain on this album. There's 3 of them. I think they all suck. TV Fish will probably say one of them would be fine. I disagree. I think all of them should be gone. On an album like this, I don't think it's necessary. If you're gonna have one, it needs to be cut at least in half length. But all 3 of these, I think, are absolute stains on the album.
Just to put things in perspective here, this album has 6.5 minutes worth of interlude.
Yeah.
Total.
Yeah, so that leaves 31 minutes of music, song.
Yeah, just saying.
That's a lot.
6.5 minutes of interlude.
Yeah.
And
most of it's just random noise.
There's next to no content on it.
Yeah.
So
it's tough. And it's a weird creative choice to have that in there.
I feel like there was a reason and the execution was poor. I feel like they're like, we gotta break up the pace somehow. Let's just right?
Breaking up the pace is absolutely fine. Doing it this way is absolutely not fine.
Exactly. The execution, very, very poor. Yeah. But the idea was there. Like, I see what they were doing.
Yeah.
I kind of feel similar to how you do, but for me, it wasn't specifically just first half, second half. It was like, okay, first half I did feel was generally stronger, but there were some songs in the second half that did stand out to me. But to comment on songs that I have notes for, I feel like I can speak for both of us when I say that Infusorium is still awesome. Mm-hmm. Sick track, probably my favorite on the record. The solo in that song really reminds me of like the type of solo you'd hear in Behemoth. Mm-hmm. Like when I heard that solo, I'm like, this is totally a Behemoth solo. Like it's really stood out that way to me, and I like that. Overall, that song kind of reminded me of just a Behemoth-style black metal song.
Yeah.
Which I thought was pretty cool. But yeah, the riff's great, the solo's great, the ending is great, like everything about that song, super duper awesome. And it didn't feel like, and I guess this is probably because it's early in the album, Ornaments, which is the first interlude track, it doesn't feel as rough when you're listening to the album front to back at that point because it's the first one and it comes after a song as intense as that, right? A song as intense and notable as that. So it kind of feels okay to take a small kind of like breather. But the thing is, the more you listen to the rest of this record, you start to get real sick of that.
I think it should have been like a 45-second breather, though, not a minute and 55 seconds.
I know, yeah.
That's the problem. I don't have a problem with it being there or existing. It's just its length and the fact that there's 3 of them is the problem.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I do think what was at the very least nice about what they did with Ornaments is that it actually does kind of transition into Coin nicely.
That nice little drum intro.
Yeah, and the 2 other interludes don't do anything like that. They don't like kind of bleed right into the next one and it's cool. It's just like it ends and then the next song starts.
They feel more out of place, like just shoehorned in.
So at the very least, okay, cool. I will say that Contaminated is the worst of the 3 because literally nothing happens in it. At the very least with the other ones, it's kind of like they're building to something, like there's kind of some kind of content in there. Contaminated is literally
static noises,
sounds,
some synth.
It's so nothing.
Goes nowhere, does nothing.
I believe it's also the longest at 2.5. Yeah. Like the song serves 0 purpose. You should delete this song now.
Yeah.
Like get rid of it. And Angels, which is the 3rd interlude, is the second last track on the album. The placement's so weird because it's like
it's not needed.
Why?
It's just not needed. Why here? Why now? Just get me to the last song and let's get this done.
Basically. Now, to speak about Coin, the song, still love that solo, which was, I assume, Gary Holt, because I remember that they mentioned that feature in the, they dropped a visualizer for it and it said featuring Gary Holt, so I figured, that feature, which is really, really cool. I also like that song starts slower as well, so that it kind of gives you that pace breaker, so you didn't need 2 minutes of something before that. But, the main thing that song really stood out to me for was that solo, because it was a killer solo. Every time it comes on, I'm like, oh yeah, here it is.
I agree. You know what I mean? In addition to that, though, like I mentioned, there's like a little drum thing at the beginning. I don't know if you call it like a fill or a roll, whatever. It has a cool little drum intro. And then the growl at the intro, too, was also sick.
Yeah.
So it has a bunch of things going for it.
I mean, I think overall, Phil's performance on this record is great.
I agree. Just some of the delivery on some of his lines.
Yeah.
Like my favorite track on this album was Blades. I think Blades takes the cake and it's just sick. And one of the main reasons for that is because of the vocals. It kicks off with a bleh. Certain phrases he says, like when he says onward and downward, just the delivery of that is brutal as fuck. I like when he says the wings of Umbra descend. He says it, then he screams it in like the sickest black metal voice right after that. Like he's introducing the verse by saying the first line of the verse. I love that. That to me was such a highlight. Gothic Tower of Gore. What a cool phrase. Whatever that fucking means. It's cool just in words, but the way he says it, the delivery again, is just stellar. But yeah, brutal delivery, a nice range, right? Deep gutturals, some really nice, really rich harshes. Like he's killing it on this. And we made compliments about this back when we did our first impressions. And we saw a lot of people also praising his vocals on this. But yeah, it delivers. It delivers.
100%, for sure. Now I know, you mentioned the first half is kind of like the meat of this album.
Yeah.
But regarding the second half, I feel like there are some standout tracks in there, mainly the title track. I really liked, and I think I mentioned this last week, or previously, the melodic tremolo that's consistent in that track, I think is really cool. It kind of gave me like an Immortal or Emperor kind of vibe to that song, and I like that because it makes it stand out. It makes it unique. It subverts it from the main problem I have with this album, which is repetition. I feel like a lot of the tracks on this album kind of do the same thing.
Yeah.
I got to a point where I'm listening to this record and I'm just jumping through songs. I'm like, they're all kind of just doing the same old thing. It's a good thing, but I feel like, do you really, like, it felt that not only is stuff like the interludes there kind of for like padding pace breaking, but it feels like there are a bunch of songs that are there just to fill space.
Yeah.
And it got to the point where it's just like, I made the decision like, what if I were to remake this album as an EP, which this is their first LP. Everything else they've done is just singles or EPs. And I guess this being an LP kind of showed me why. So then I developed an EP version of this album, which you could maybe switch a few things around, but for me listening to it, it felt like this is all the most quality stuff and it kind of flows well. So it's 7 tracks, and it's this track list: Cross, Infusorium, Invoke, Ornaments, Coin, Gold, Serve. Now you can maybe swap a few things here and there, but generally when I listened to that as an EP, it felt like I was thoroughly enjoying all of it, as opposed to enjoying a track or two and then just kind of like, yeah, what was this one? And then
it didn't feel like there was filler in there.
Exactly.
Because that's what the album feels like. It feels like they had a nice body and a nice foundation, but then just injected a bunch of filler in there for whatever reason.
To make it an LP.
To make it an LP, maybe, yeah. I mean...
You know what I mean? It's like everything else has been an EP, and this would have been a sick EP,
yeah,
but they padded it to make it an LP.
I saw somebody made a comment about this album is basically doing what Dimmu Borgir hasn't done in 20 plus years or something like that. And I went, you know what? That kind of makes sense. I see where that sentiment's coming from.
Yeah,
I also see the reason is because Dimmu Borgir has moved on and has expanded their sound and started doing other things. I wish there was a little bit of that in this album, just a little bit more of a diversity of sound and a little bit more just reaching out and branching out a little bit. But I also understand the inverse of that, where you're going for a certain sound, you're going for a certain style, and you stick with it, right? And that's what this is. They do a good job at that.
Yeah.
But again, as a listener, love it. As a reviewer, it's tough.
It's hard to critique something like this, especially when you have those 3 interludes that just really hurt this album.
It's true.
But then on top of that, I think it would be nice for at least 1 or 2 tracks to be a more slower or symphonic-based track. Because I remember, I want to say I mentioned this in the reaction to Blades, where it's like, wow, both of these 2 singles, they sound pretty different from each other. It kind of feels like they're pulling from every different aspect of black metal here. But then the album comes out, we listen to it, and it's like, well, a lot of it just kind of sounds like the same thing.
Yeah, all the songs are pulling from all the aspects of black metal.
Yeah.
So they're all doing the same kind of thing, yeah.
Yeah, and I wish they kind of mixed it up a bit more. Instead of these 3, interludes like this, they could just have like one song that's just like kind of like a slow thing or whatever. Or, something like the last track, Serve. I feel like that one, at least kind of, you listen to that and it's like, yeah, this kind of gives the vibe of a closer. And even when it ends and then it just turns into Phil talking, I thought that was pretty neat.
Yeah, I like that ending too.
So, that was one of the reasons why I included it in like the EP version that I kind of made.
Yeah, it feels like a good closing song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel that it does what it wants. It does what it's meant to do. If you want some good, like, evil black metal that is well produced, well performed, evil stuff, this is a great album for that. I just feel that if you're gonna grind this album so much and really try to look at it critically and try to be like, okay, what about these songs really stand out? It's kind of hard to find more standout moments, like, for more than half the album.
Yeah. That's basically my stance on it too. So anyways, with that said, I think we should rate the album.
Let's do it.
So I did a quick calculation. So I've explained this on the channel before. The way we rate each song, and then we do a calculation to decide a final score. So it's all score based on the song performances. I did a quick calculation, and because these interludes were such trash, I basically gave them all the lowest score possible, which is a 0 each. I did not like them. In order for this album to land in toe tag territory, every other song had to be perfect.
Ooh.
And that would have landed it just into toe tag territory.
Like barely.
Barely. So it's obviously not gonna reach that for me. Yeah. And that's a shame because of these interludes. It really hurts the score of the album. With that said, there's some good stuff on here. I think Adam Jarvis's drum performance on this album is great all the way through. We talked about Phil on the vocals already. I like that there's some nice little bass parts that shine out. The guitar work is pretty good. Overall, it's just a solid metal album. It needs more, and it should have taken some of the stuff out.
More or less at the same time.
More or less. So my score is what it is, and I'm going to say it in a second, but I'm just going to preface this by saying I've given this score like 3 or 4 times this year already, and I'm just getting annoyed with how my scores have been landing. But it's a 5, and I'm in this weird, maybe it's not me, maybe it's just what's been coming out, but it's this weird thing where albums are kind of just always 50-50 for me. Yeah. It's either a 5 or a toe tag, it feels like, for me this year. So, this album, like, 50% of it's super, super good, and the other 50% is like, take it or leave it.
Yeah, you know what?
Basically where I stand.
I kind of find myself in a similar situation that the album is well performed. Like I said, if you like this kind of stuff, you'll love the album no matter what.
Yeah.
But I do feel like there could have been more quality in this record, and it felt like they put a bunch of filler and padding in there that was not necessary. And considering the little EP version I made, that's basically cutting the album in half. So for me, if half the album is the juicy part and the other half isn't, I'm gonna have to match that score out of 5.
There you go, folks. Gold gets double 5s here on Two Toe Tags. Unfortunately, not gonna make the list or even come kind of close to it, which is a shame because we were pretty hyped for this, and it definitely had potential. But you know what? I think these guys are gonna be around for a bit. I definitely see them doing more work, and hopefully it's not EP, and they do another LP, but do it properly.
Yes.
And, you know, our opinions are just our opinions. Other people out there might be loving this from front to back and all that stuff, but either way, you guys gotta listen to it, check it out, and leave your thoughts down below. Let us know what you guys think and what you guys would rate it, and if you agree with us or not, sound off down below. Anyways, guys, that's it from us for now. Subscribe if you guys are new to the channel. I'm By Yourself.
I'm TV Fish.
And we'll see you guys in the next one. Keep those heads banging.